Housing bubble? More like housing shortage. I'm Frank Della, Femina for Hallmark Realtors. There's been a lot of talk recently about the possibility of real estate existing inside of some kind of bubble. And like many bubbles, many people sit back, wait, and expect it to burst. But just like how 1 year ago, many people expected coronavirus to lead to more foreclosures right around this time of year, sometimes reality doesn't meet predictions. I suppose headlines aren't helping much, which even recently inspired massive searches in Google to try and determine when this so-called bubble might be bursting. In mid-April, Google shared data showing that searches for, quote, when is the housing market going to crash, end quote, increased by nearly 2,500%. In my humble opinion, we're not in a bubble, we're simply dealing with a massive housing shortage. Home buyers are outnumbering sellers because mortgage rates are low, and this of course does indicate that it is a seller's market. But with low interest rate, that allows buyers to have more affordability, which will simultaneously allow buyers to purchase at a higher price and ultimately go higher than perhaps a price they had in mind if it means they can get that house. And yes, that would be the textbook definition of overpaying. However, assuming houses continue to appreciate at the current rate of roughly 3 to 5% annually, and that these buyers are locked into a low mortgage rate, and on top of that, if buying now spares them more months of pain and suffering and looking for homes, ultimately, it finds a way of balancing itself out in the end. So again, instead of looking at the prices people are paying, let's look at the inventory because that is what is driving the prices that people are paying. In a recent article on Axios.com, writer Felix Salmon broke out a visual on home availability dating all the way back to January 1999. This chart illustrates the peaks and valleys of real estate, but it also really shows just how much the industry is hurting right now from a lack of supply. All you have to do is look at this point on the chart, and you can see for yourself that this is a 22-year low. The previous bubble of 2007 and 2008 shows the ridiculous amount of homes available at that time. In that buyer's market, countless homes were going unsold, being foreclosed, or selling well below what the original purchase price was. And that has a lot to do with the fact that buyers had their choice and they can pick whatever they wanted because most people were trying to sell their homes at that time as a result of the mortgage crisis. At that time, sellers really had to work on attracting buyers. Not only did the price have to be reasonable or at least in line with what the price down the block or around the corner or even next door was offering, but sellers had to more or less roll out a red carpet and really work with their buyers to close a sale. As indicated by this current market, inventory is low and prices are going through the roof, which is the complete opposite of what we saw in 2007 and 2008. So how does this all ultimately balance out? First off, honestly, more houses available to buyers would obviously help, and there's an indication, or I should say at least a hope, that a post-vaccination herd immunity will comfort sellers who may have otherwise been on the fence during the pandemic. Secondly, interest rates are expected to increase a bit this year as the economy recovers and rebuilds itself, which will ultimately either remove some buyers from the field or at least lower the affordability of buyers heading into this market. All that aside, inflation is also still very much a concern, and we're seeing that now more than ever with things like the price of lumber, something I covered in a previous video, and accessibility to home building materials. Even things like copper, which are used in piping and wiring, are at the highest they've been in years. The best solution to lowering home prices is more homes available to buy. Strangely enough, sellers interested in getting top dollar for their homes are in a great spot to do it right now than if they wait and are joined by additional homes in the future. But in that case, it is sort of a catch-22. But to sit here and say we are currently living inside a housing bubble would be somewhat sensational. And just like many buyers who thought last year around this time would give them an opportunity to then turn around and buy a foreclosure in the future, I just don't see how a housing bubble will burst. In fact, it's just going to level out, or I should say deflate a little bit more. So I would encourage you to look at this from the perspective of what generally defines any kind of market, whether it's housing, stocks, or even your local farmer's market. This is a simple case of supply and demand. There's a lot of demand, but no supply, which again reiterates that this is the perfect time for sellers to get top dollar for their homes. I'm Frank Della, Femina for Hallmark Realtors. Thanks for watching.